Hello.
Hello.
So tonight we are going to be talking again about one of our absolute favorite topics, Chicago, and we're going to tell you why you should consider moving here.
One of the first reasons that we want to talk about is the walkability and just the public transportation here in Chicago.
Yes. Yeah, most places in the downtown kind of area and sort of region are pretty much walkable if you're up for it. Some of them can be kind of far from where we live. For example, it's about a 45-50 minute walk to get to like Lincoln Park, for instance. But it's a great walk. And so if you have 45-50 minutes to spare and you want to take a nice long walk to get up to Lincoln Park, you can do so.
Yeah, and there's like stuff along the way too.
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
back in Kentucky, like I used to walk to places, but there was nothing in between. So
Right.
It's nice because you can like pop into a Starbucks, pop into shopping or whatever.
Yeah, you can kind of spend a whole Saturday afternoon or, whatever, kind of walking up and down Michigan. You can pop in and grab a meal if you're hungry, grab a Starbucks if you want some coffee, those kinds of things.
And
if you don't want to walk,
you can take the bus or the train.
Yes.
Or bicycle.
That's true. Yeah, you can bike if you don't want to walk. But the buses or trains, very easy to use. Trains go a lot of different great places in the city, and buses go just about everywhere.
Yeah, over the winter, I was working up north. I took the train every day to work, and then also last fall, I was working out west, and I took the train once a week out there. It's so easy, especially if you get the little Ventra card thing on your phone. You can just boop and then go right in, and it's compared to like what you would pay for gas or car insurance. It's
or
like
car maintenance. Those kind of things. Parking.
It's nothing. The price is like negligible, so it's super nice, super convenient.
Yeah, and the Venture card, going back to that really quickly, we actually relatively recently found out that you literally don't even have to open your phone. You just touch it near the scanner and it works. So it's kind of amazing. I love it.
And then buses, if there's somewhere you're going that isn't on a train route, there's always buses.
A bus
there's
can get
tons and
anywhere.
tons of buses, and you may have to wait a little longer, but sometimes they're pretty just as frequent as the train. So it's.
I mean, yeah, I have found that to be true anyway. They seem to be pretty consistent. I would say the buses, the downside would be, during like rush hour traffic. But one of the great things about buses is if it's raining or like suddenly you did a little more shopping than you were expecting, or those kinds of things, and you're like, oh, this is really heavy carrying it home. A bus you can kind of hop on real quickly and access a bus from a lot of different places too. Versus the train line, you have to kind of get to the train. So if you're in an area where a train line isn't super close, you'd still have quite a hike to get there. Whereas a bus you could probably catch pretty quickly. So. Excellent public transportation. Honestly, some of the best in the United States.
Yeah.
Obviously there's not a lot of it here, so it's really good in the city. So next up on our list is the food scene.
Yes. Hands down, obviously my favorite thing about Chicago.
Yeah.
I love eating. As if you watched our vlogs, you know that we like to go out to eat a lot, and
we have fantastic restaurants.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna say, there obviously New York. There's other cities in the United States that have incredible food, but many of the restaurants here are just top tier restaurants. So you kind of get a little spoiled to just have at your fingertips some of the best food in the country, for sure.
Yeah, and then there's even like a lot of really nice like quick options, like places you can just pick up dinner for and bring it back home
for like affordable prices, and also very healthy options. That's one of the great things I love about a lot of the quick options that we have around here. Is it's a lot of stuff that's got a lot of veggies and variety of foods. You're not just talking chicken fingers and fries and those kinds of things.
Yeah,
there's anything wrong with that.
Not just fast food too.
But it's not just fast food. Yeah,
I know that technically like Chipotle and Nando are like fast food, but like they're they're like little places like that are like really nice.
You're getting like fresh food.
You go to
well cooked.
What's the poke place that you like to?
Well, I have a few poke places I like, but poke burrito is actually my favorite. But at work, we have an Aloha Poke in the building right behind us, so super convenient, which is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, one more thing about food. I want to talk about the food trucks, walk-ups, carts, kiosks.
So
kind of all over the city, really.
Do you want to?
No, you go ahead.
There's tons of places like little, like we call them kiosks, but they're like buildings that are like a little container.
They're like permanent structures. They're not like they're not like carts, like rolly structures. They're like permanent structures, but they might not be open all year long.
Yeah, and there's some that sell like, most of them sell hot dogs. Usually because it's the Chicago hot dog is what we're famous for. But like on the Riverwalk, like I would consider Taco Rio.
Lots of taco places. Yeah. Taco Rio's like that.
Kind of like that.
A lot of the ones on the Riverwalk
like that. Well, the Beat Kitchen was like that, but places where it's like a restaurant, but it's just like a one step down.
Yeah, and it might only be open half the year because it's really more of a kind of outside walk up kind of place.
Sometimes they have tables. Sometimes they just have like
like the little hot dog stand out front. It has little tables that they put out with umbrellas, which is nice.
Yeah, sometimes they're just in the park, so like you can just like sit in the park.
Go,
But yeah.
And then food halls too.
Oh.
Because along the lines of quick service, there's a lot of food halls. Probably in the Loop, there's at least 5 of them. Maybe there's a lot, and they have. Sometimes they'll have things in them like Aloha Poke. They're like also out on their own, but they have a lot of kind of quick options that are all kinds of varieties. You can get, food from all kinds of different regions and areas, and just a massive variety. And it's great. I love the food halls at work. We go to them sometimes on the days we're in the office because there's something for everyone, which is really nice. So those are great too.
Yeah, they're definitely more saturated downtown just because of like
I think they're meant for lunch.
Like it's like you can go, like your whole team can go, and like someone could get something in different areas, and you don't have to pick the same restaurant. They're really convenient, and
we have several of them.
Typically,
so it's great
you
have a lot of options.
If you order from them and like order at different places, you can pick it up in one location too, which is super convenient.
Yeah, we've done that at Revival before, where we both ordered from different places, but they actually package it in one to go. And so when you walk, you go to a single place to pick up, so you don't have to like go to this place and to this place. You just walk to the single pickup, which I think is great. It's really convenient.
So the next thing that we can talk about are the festivals and events and just happenings going on
pretty much all the time.
City.
Definitely all the time from spring to fall.
Yeah, for the entire summer for sure.
Yeah.
We do a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. Right now, the Blues Festival is going on.
Yes, and there's a lot of people out because of that.
It's wild. It's a crazy time. And next weekend, we have the Gold Coast Art Festival. That's
we do quite a bit of art fairs or whatever. Mm-hmm. Those are fun to go to. Like even if you're not buying anything, it's just fun to look at artists and.
There's Lit Fest.
Sometimes they have like food that you can get. So.
Oh yeah, most of them have like food, even like drinks. Sometimes you can get like beer or like little. Didn't they have like wasn't there something they were serving in a pineapple last year? I thought it was at the Gold Coast Art Festival. I guess we'll find out. Because that's this weekend, so we'll figure it out. But yeah, a lot of those kind of activities. Lit Fest is a really fun one. I always enjoy that. Millennium Park does a lot of just kind of like free events in the amphitheater, like basically every weekend, from movies to concerts to all kinds of things. So it's just kind of always something going on, especially in Millennium and Grant Park. And I think for us, because we live so close to those parks, we get to see a lot of those.
Yeah.
And then there's even things that are indoors, like the One of a Kind show. And out in Fulton Market, there's different kind of like artisan shows, which I love those because they're kind of more like a craft show. So you're kind of dealing more with like maybe small businesses that are maybe they do homemade candles or the homemade soaps and those kinds of things, which is really cool. Okay, so next up is green space.
Oh yeah.
This is a big one because obviously we live in a concrete jungle, right? Like we live in downtown city, so buildings and skyscrapers and lots of concrete and stone and metal everywhere. But there is so much green space.
I mean, off the top of my head, I can name like 6 parks that are within walking distance that are massive.
Yeah. Yeah, with beautiful trees. I mean, mature trees, nice shade. Grant Park is really beautiful. You've got a lot of places you can go there. Sometimes we'll take picnics and go out to Grant Park and just sit under the trees and just really honestly enjoy a beautiful day. Just sitting there, kind of, you almost feel tucked away. You don't even realize you're kind of in the city and you're just right in the heart of it, which is nice. The lakefront. All of the lakefront is very green, lots of trees. So the entire lakefront trail, and some of it is more natural than others because obviously the lakefront trail spans is it 18 miles?
Yes.
Yeah, 18 miles. So there's obviously spaces that are more green even than others. Millennium Park is a little more manicured, a little more kind of structured, I guess, in how it's set up. It's not quite as natural. And then right next to it is Maggie Daly, which is really nice. And then of course Lincoln Park. And Lincoln Park is I would really honestly put that kind of, in my opinion, akin to Central Park in New York. It's obviously not as big, but I think that from a kind of the way that it feels being in Lincoln Park, to me, feels like being in Central Park.
I would say that Lincoln Park is probably the most that feels like actual nature. Like you're in the woods. Like
it really does. Like, it doesn't feel like you're in the city at all. And then all of a sudden you kind of realize there's buildings above the trees.
Like,
and you're like, oh,
look through an open tree line and there's like, a massive building there.
Yeah, but it's gorgeous. And of course the zoo and the conservatories up there.
Like the water... What is that called? Like North Pond.
North Pond.
Yeah, that's really
beautiful
pretty.
There.
On the south, there's like the Japanese gardens. If you go farther south, Jackson Park is like a huge park with more like a golf cart course and like ballparks and like all of this stuff. It's all like crammed in like a pretty massive park. It's really great. Yeah.
But just so many access to different parks, which is great too, because then you get a variety as well. So you can kind of, it's not like you're just getting tired going to the same one all the time, which is great. The other thing that is nice is there's green space mixed in the city as well, like non-park green space. So I think they've done a really nice job throughout the city of planting trees and having gardens. There's one I actually walk by on my way to work. When I go in the office, and I think, oh, what a lovely little garden that is. And I think it's really for maybe that building, but it's like right there by the train and by the building. But it's just this beautiful little, garden where there's trees and cute little benches and tables, so you could take your lunch out, and eat there or whatever. It's really lovely, and there's kind of trees along the way. And then of course, if you're up in the Gold Coast, in that area, there's a lot of like North Astor, for instance. There's just like beautiful mature trees that just line that street. So like there's trees on either side of the street, and sometimes in the middle of the street where it feels like you don't feel like you're. It doesn't feel like you're downtown, and you are, which is really great. So love that too. And then of course I mentioned the lakefront, but also the river too. There's green space along the river, so that's nice when you're going along the river walk. There are lots of places to eat, lots of things to do there, but there's also just green space to sit and enjoy as well.
Speaking of the river, one of my favorite things, our favorite things about Chicago is the water.
Of course.
Obviously, I work on the river almost every day. It's my favorite part of the city.
I run on the lake. Every morning. It's my favorite.
We are very fortunate to live in such a great downtown, but then we have basically access to an ocean, a sea,
a freshwater ocean.
Yeah, and then we have like a huge river. Yeah. So it's really
it's actually nice. I think having both the river and the lake. I actually really like that it's not just one or the other, but we're definitely spoiled here for water. I can't imagine living in another place where I'm not living on water.
Yeah.
If we were ever to leave Chicago, which I can't imagine, but if we were ever to leave, it would have to be for a place that is also on water, because that's probably my absolute favorite thing about living here. I think if I had to boil it down to one thing, this is the top thing.
Yeah. It is beautiful too. Like, I know we don't have that great of a view, but like your parents have a great view, and it's like just looking out over the lake.
Just to be sitting kind of in their living room and just like looking out over the lake on just a beautiful day is just so peaceful and pleasant.
And then even like the river, like there's tons of restaurants that overlook the river, and like it's such a great thing to just sit by the river and like
it makes your dining experience
as
really
it passes by.
Even if it's not a fancy dining experience, it feels fancy because you're on the water. Which is really nice. And the next is the theater scene, which is a big one for me because I'm a musical theater kid. Grew up doing theater, obviously. I was in show choir, all of those things, and I've always loved Broadway. And here in Chicago, we have Broadway Chicago. And of course, a lot of the Broadway shows travel and go to cities all across the country. But we have 4 theaters that service Broadway Chicago. So at any given point in time, there are 4 shows going on at one time. I think it was, especially our first year living here, really difficult to contain myself from buying tickets to just every single show that played ever. Realized really quickly that there's budget constraints to doing that. And it's probably wise to not go to every single show. So kind of, being a little bit more picky on which ones we go to. But it's phenomenal. And even, and what is nice, I don't know if you noticed, but Six is back, We saw 6 a couple of years ago when we first moved here, and it's already back. So I also think that because Chicago's such kind of a hub for it, because we have multiple theaters, it's likely and plausible that we'll get shows kind of frequently, which is really nice. I think Les Mis is back as well.
That is a good thing, because there's sometimes that we miss a show or like...
Yeah, sometimes it just doesn't work with your schedule. Like, there's just no way you can make it. And so knowing that, hey, it'll probably be here again in another year or two, we'll catch it that time is kind of good and help me calm down a little bit from my, we have to go see it.
Yeah, there's also shows that I wouldn't mind seeing it every time I was here.
Chicago.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
That is probably one of my favorite shows, and we'll see that every time.
I've seen that one like...
We've seen that numerous times in the theater.
3 or 4 times now.
I rarely would say no to that. So, yeah. Even if we have to just get cheap seats, I want to see that show.
That one's about the music anyway, so...
It's true. It's true. But there's also smaller independent theaters. So there's a lot of theaters that do, smaller shows. It's not just about Broadway Chicago, which, by the way, here in the Loop, I think I counted officially 6 theaters here just in the Loop. So 4 of those are the ones that service Broadway Chicago: the Auditorium Theater, CIBC, Cadillac Palace, and then Nederlander. But there's also the Chicago Theater, which that's the one everyone knows, right? That's the marquee. Everybody knows the Chicago Theater, and the Goodman, which is right across the street. And the Goodman and the Chicago Theater both are kind of more, my apologies, they're on separate streets, but they're on streets right next to each other. But they do more like kind of comedians or like visiting celebrities and like things like that than they do like Broadway shows or like plays. Although I think the Goodman does do some plays, but they're smaller independent plays overall. So. And
then there's also the comedy scene too.
A huge here.
Obviously,
like Second City.
If you know anything about comedians, like most
so
of
many of them got their start
originated here in Second City, up in Old Town.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of improv theaters too.
Tons and tons of independent little comedy theaters, just to see comedians.
Yeah, so if you're looking for that kind of entertainment, I mean, and I think the nice thing about the theater scene is you really can get anything, right? If you're someone who's like, well, I like plays, but I don't like musicals, there's something for you. You like musicals? Excellent. There's something for you. You like to see just people who are comedians or maybe just, performers of different kinds coming. We've got something for you. And I think that's really great.
I mean, and then music too. We have tons of music
it's a really good call.
We have
like the House of Blues.
Yeah, the House of Blues, Salt Shed, Wrigley. A lot of people play at Wrigley and
of course,
Soldier Field. Yeah. Northerly Isle is pretty popular.
Yeah, there's always musicians coming through here, always concerts going on, those kinds of things as well.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
great access to that kind of
It's a big city. It's usually on like one of the tour stops of most touring musicians, so it's great. Yes. The next thing we're going to talk about is the architecture.
We talk about this a lot because we love the architecture.
I just love learning about the city.
The history of the city is so rich.
Before we moved here, I just was really interested in learning as much as possible about Chicago. I think it's pretty old of a city, so it has a lot of history. And
of course, even like because of the fire and the rebuilding and all, I think that kind of like, I don't know, doubles the history, especially when you're talking about architecture, because it's like those things that did survive and those, that were built after.
Of course, Chicago has a lot of famous architects that has buildings here. Mies van der Rohe is probably at the top there. He was one of the founders of Bauhaus, and like very distinct style of building, and you can see them throughout the city.
Even influences of Mies van der Rohe. I mean, there's obviously a lot of Mies van der Rohe buildings in Chicago, but you definitely see his influence.
Tons of buildings that he did not design, but you can tell that they were inspired by his design. Bertrand Goldberg is pretty famous. If you know Marina City Towers, the probably the most famous buildings in Chicago.
You might call them the corncob buildings.
Yeah. Just tons of like.
Well, Frank Lloyd Wright.
Frank Lloyd Wright. Adrian Smith is very famous. If you know the Burj Khalifa, he has a building here in Chicago. Jeannie Gang, a Chicago native. They have the St. Regis here. It's the tallest building in the world, designed by a female-led architecture firm. Mm-hmm. That's pretty awesome.
And Aqua.
Aqua was the previous record holder. Just tons of variety of architects.
And I think what's really cool, even about the ones that you just mentioned, it's like spanning, time too, which
so
I think is one of the cool things tying back to the history. You see the influence of architecture and different architectural styles because the city has continued to grow over time. So like the St. Regis is a very new building.
2022.
Yeah. And, versus the Marina City, right?
1960s.
Yeah.
The Chicago Tribune, 1920s.
Right.
The Wrigley Building, 1920s. It's like, it's
really cool
it's really awesome because you can kind of see that like trend of architectural throughout the years, and it's like it's really fun.
But it's all mixed in,
Yeah.
which is neat too. I love that part as well because it's kind of the old next to new, and it's really neat. And we live in an older building, so it's kind of cool. And ours is very art deco, which I love the art deco style, so it's really neat. All right, so next up is museums. So we have both large and small. There's, obviously the ones people know. There's the, Field Museum, obviously, Museum of Science and Industry. There's the Art Institute. There's some very well-known museums that I think most people, even if you haven't been to Chicago, you probably know what those are. But there's also small ones too. I think that the Chicago History Museum is one of my favorites. It's a really cool little museum, and I think a lot of people don't know about it. And then there's there's a few that we haven't even gone to they're kind of on my list to try that are very small. They might be in like kind of maybe it's an old home, like what used to be a person's home, but I would call it like a mansion, but it's been turned into museums. Yeah. Like what's the one that's it's the German one? No, what is that one called?
Dree House?
Dree House. Yeah. That's the one.
There's also the Chicago Modern Art.
Yes.
I think it's what it's called. I don't know the exact name.
I think it's the Chicago Museum of Modern Art.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah.
There is a lot.
There's a lot. So what's nice about that is if you're visiting Chicago, obviously it gives you a lot of different options, for different trips if you're coming. But when you live here, you can, you don't get tired of it, which is nice.
Well,
just
also
and they have visiting.
They have free days too.
Oh yeah, and there's free days for residents.
Illinois residents, they have free days that you can just go to the museum for free.
Yeah,
which
is really
awesome. And like typically, it's only people that are. That day is reserved for only Illinois residents, so it's kind of nice.
I think they are like that, and so my mom has taken advantage of that a couple times. We have not done that yet. We
should. There's also I guess would you consider the aquarium and the planetarium and
I would put those as museum adjacent. So yeah, I think so. There's as far as I guess we could say museum / activities, places to go, that kind of stuff.
They're on museum,
never tire
they're
of
on
things
museum
to see.
campus. So
they are. That's true. So that's fair.
But those are really fun to do, and it's just like right at our fingertips.
Yeah,
it's a short walk.
Yeah, it's fantastic. That's one of my favorite things about living here.
And then the next thing, obviously, speaking of personal experience, active living. Yeah. We find that when we live here in Chicago that we are more active than ever.
Yeah. And it was one of the things that when we were wanting to move here, we talked about, how, and I think we've always generally been pretty active. You've been pretty heavy into biking for a long time. I had been running for a while, but we knew moving here, we were like, we're going to definitely be way more active. And we are just naturally obviously we don't have cars, so we walk a lot. So we are out and about walking, obviously a lot more, putting in more steps than we usually do. But even running, my running has amped up. I feel like I've gotten faster. I run longer. I'm doing 7 races this year, possibly 8. That's why I'm wearing my Soldier Field shirt. It's one of my favorite race swag shirts I've gotten so far. Kayaking, obviously.
Oh yeah, kayaking.
Yeah.
It's such a great thing to be able to do in the downtown situation. We're so fortunate because of the water that you can do things like kayak or paddleboard
for your job,
and get paid to do it.
That's pretty cool.
I really love the lakefront trail for biking. Yeah. That was one thing that I was I would say nervous when I moved here, was I took advantage of road biking a lot on country roads, or just kind of
it can be kind of scary.
Probably in places where I'm not supposed to. But it was in the country, so it wasn't as bad, and you can hear people coming. I don't bike on the street here at all.
There are people who do, and there's a lot of bike lanes, but it's scary. The lakefront trail is very pleasant.
I know a lot of people that say they were scared at first, but they just got to start doing it. But when you have the lakefront trail, you kind of really don't need to.
Well, and you typically have biked for more sport and recreation than for utility.
Yes. My biking is almost entirely just for like exercise.
Yeah. So it's a little different because there are people who are biking, you know, to and from work, and like because it, you know, it's just simply a faster or better method for them to get to and from work. So that is a little different.
Yeah,
in that,
I know a lot
regard.
of people that like, or a lot of people bike to the kayak place, and they like bike the lakefront trail, or they have to go down one street to the lakefront trail,
which wouldn't be so bad.
But yeah, I love biking, kayaking, running,
Yeah,
walking.
Just so many different ways to be active, out moving. You know, and in a lot of ways, it doesn't have to be an exercise format. Really, it could be just enjoyable. I mean, like biking up the lakefront trail, I think is a really good example. I mean, you can bike for exercise, obviously, kind of intensely bike, or you can take my route and be more like a leisurely biker who's going to like pause and take in the view every so often. So maybe get a snack, those kinds of things. So, so next up on the list is cost of living. And this one, in my opinion, makes the list because if you compare overall kind of median house prices, now obviously there are exceptions to this rule. You know, there are buildings that are very expensive, right? There are buildings that only some people could afford to live in. But across the board, the median income or median home price for a condo in Chicago compared to like Seattle or New York or San Francisco, is considerably less, even than Seattle. I would say Seattle is probably the most comparable, but considerably less than New York or San Francisco for sure. And it's funny because part of me thinks, well, oh, it's probably the weather, because you know, obviously San Francisco is gorgeous, you know, pretty much all the time, but New York has very similar weather to us, if not worse. So that doesn't really make sense to me. But I mean, so I suppose that's the price you're paying. You are in a winter environment. But to have what we have here, for what you can buy, the square footage that you can buy, it is very affordable. I think against what many people might believe. They might believe, oh, it's just not affordable, I couldn't live there. Those are lies. Don't listen to them. It is affordable to live here and to live downtown, which I think is great. And it was such an attractive thing to us, especially with the ability of not having a car. Because then it's like, not only can you get, you know, a pretty affordable home, but you also don't have to have a car, which costs money. So that is a huge savings, and that's really nice. So the next up is access to 2 major airports. This is a really big benefit. I mean, I realize like this is kind of like we're getting in the level of we're just spoiled. Now we're bragging. But it really is a huge benefit to have access to 2 major airports. We definitely like Midway better. We like to fly Southwest, so we usually fly in and out of Midway over O'Hare. But having access to both, to me, it brings me like peace of mind. For instance, with cruising, you know, they always say, oh, you should come in at least a day early, maybe even 2. I always feel very confident going in a day early because, you know, for us, we cruise out of Port Canaveral, so we flew into Orlando. I was like, there are like 18 other flights from Midway alone on just Southwest that we can catch if we miss our flight, not to mention the other airlines and the other airport, right? So I feel very confident in being able to get somewhere when I want to get there, unless there's a storm here, you know, unless there was some kind of weather here that was affecting obviously all planes, that would be different. But also you can get basically anywhere in the world from here. Yeah. Which is incredible.
And they're both on a train.
Yes, like, they are.
On a train line with a stop. So you can just get there, you know, in Kentucky, we had to drive our car or get someone to take us there. And then when we come back, we had to find an Uber or someone to come pick us up. Yeah. Here, you just get on the train, you walk to the train. And they go directly into the airport. Right to the airport. You get off and you're basically,
the train stop is just outside the airport and then you walk directly.
And they're basically like connected to the terminal. So you just walk through in a building through into the airport. So convenient.
Yeah. And the Midway is on the Orange Line. It's about 20-ish minutes. It's really quick, super easy. And then the O'Hare's on the Blue Line, and it's about 45 minutes. So, which is not horrible, honestly. So, again, we tend to prefer Midway, but having access to both is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think there is an upcharge to take the train from O'Hare.
Yeah, I do think it costs a little bit more.
It's like $7.
I thought it was $5, but it might be $7. They might have upped it. It's a little bit more expensive.
But that's nothing.
Because it's like $2.50 from Midway.
Because, like what is an Uber? Like $35?
Right.
Or more, depending on the time of year.
Yeah, well, depending on the time of day. And they can hike up those prices. So, yeah. Last one on the list.
The last thing we want to talk about is how dog friendly Chicago is. Obviously, you know, we have Weasel, and we like to take her places because we love her.
and she doesn't love being at home by herself.
She does not like it. Yeah, she's horribly attached to this person. But yeah, there's like so many places that she can go and no worries. I remember.
Yeah, restaurants, stores. I mean, we just basically take her everywhere.
I was gonna say, I remember like the first time that we came here, maybe the first time that we went to the Nordstrom Mall, and there were just people with dogs in there, and I was just like, that's such a strange thing, but like it's like encouraged. There's so many restaurants. Like, we just took her to Sweetwater the other night, and like.
Yeah, they think nothing of it. And so, many restaurants will actually even like provide like meals you can buy for the dogs. Yeah. Nonina is one of it's an Italian restaurant in River North. We call it Weasel's favorite restaurant because she gets a meal there that she really loves. She has kind of a sensitive tummy, so she can't order just anything. So I couldn't order her food at like every restaurant, but they have one that's just like basically like chicken and rice and like some like peas and like just that kind of stuff. So it's really simple.
And she is in a stroller, so it might be slightly different if you have like just a dog like.
No, you still can bring them.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, they have to, like, I don't know, sit and... It's a little different because they have to, like, calm and, like, they have to...
Well, yeah, you should probably have a well-behaved dog if you're going to take advantage of the dog friendliness. Probably a well-behaved dog. Remember the barbecue place that we ate at that had the two giant, like, English... I don't know, what are they called? Newfoundlands. But they were, like, the brown ones. They were, like, all brown. Maybe you weren't with me. Maybe it was just me and my parents.
I don't remember this.
Oh, my goodness. And they were... I mean, easily 200-pound dogs each. They were massive dogs. They were so well behaved.
Oh, okay. I was waiting for that.
No, they were so well behaved. So we were out on the patio at this place. I think it's called Q. It's up in like the Gold Coast area, and they were just sitting there, just chilling on the. I mean, probably hot because it was a warm day and they had a lot of fur. But they were just sitting there chilling right next to their owners, taking up a lot of space because they were very big dogs. And I remember just thinking, I can't imagine having to vacuum that home, like, and how much hair those dogs accumulate. It's just wild. But that's the nice thing too. Even if we don't have Weasel with us, we get to see dogs everywhere we go. It's just like, very dog friendly.
There's tons of places to take the dog, like parks that we mentioned. I see people always running along the Riverwalk or on the lakefront trail with their dog. Yeah, it's just like it's very. You
see lots of stroller dogs. Weasel's not the only one, and some little backpack dogs too.
Oh yeah, I see that. Really some big backpack dogs. I saw that one that was like a 50-pound corgi. And
I did see
out,
a big corgi in a backpack.
Really like backpacking backpack. It was like full of its fluff.
That would get hot and heavy real quick.
Yeah, the guy was on a scooter, and the dog had one of those
that's cute.
Motorcycle glasses.
Anything else? Is that everything? I think we've covered everything that we wanted to. Those are our kind of top reasons to move, why we think you should move here, because it's a great place to live, and why we moved here, right? Why it mattered to us. I'm sure there's other reasons, and I'm sure there's other people who live here that have things that are their favorites that didn't make our list. But those were the top ones that came to mind when we were thinking, why did we move here, and why should you?
So if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and ring the bell icon for more notifications when we post new videos. And don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time.